Okay, what we're going to talk about today is adding and subtracting positive integers. And what we're particularly going to focus on is mental strategies for doing that. But before we can talk about mental strategies, let's talk about a couple of ideas that should be revision for you. First of all, this symbol, of course, means add or find a sum. Okay? Add or find a sum. Now there's two special laws that we can use, or properties that we can use when we're talking about addition. One of those is called the Commutative Law. And the Commutative Law says that we can add two numbers together. If we're adding two numbers together, it doesn't matter which order we're doing it in. So for example, the way we write this is A plus B is the same thing as B plus A, whatever those numbers are. So for example, 2 plus 3 is the same as 3 plus 2. Either way, it's 5. 7 plus 5 is the same as 5 plus 7. Either way, it's 12. That's called the Commutative Law. The Associative Law is very similar to that. And the Associative Law deals with situations where we have brackets. Now, as you know, with the brackets we would normally do A plus B first. However, the Associative Law says to us that if both of the signs are addition, then it doesn't actually matter where the brackets are. So we can do this the other way. We could say A plus, and we could add B plus C together. Now, if you think about that, sometimes that would be pretty useful. Let's just use a really simple example. Let's say that we had 8 plus 7 plus 3. Now that's not a hard problem, but if we move the brackets around, it actually becomes easier. So let's say we had 8 plus 7 plus 3. That's now a very easy problem. 7 plus 3 is 10. And then all we have to do is add 8 to it and we get 18. So that's what the Associative Law is for. Now, the other symbol, with which I'm sure you're very familiar already, is this one. And that means to subtract or to find a difference. A difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. Now, the commutative and the associative laws do not work with subtraction. Think about that for a second. If I said 6 minus 4, that is not the same thing. That would be 2. It's not the same thing as 4 minus 6, which would give me a negative number, negative 2. Okay, so those are our preliminary ideas. Now what we're talking about today, as I said, is mental strategies for adding and subtracting. There's 3 things we want to talk about. The first one is called partitioning. Partitioning is about grouping similar digits in a pair of numbers so that we can add them more easily in our heads. Let me give you an example. Let's say that we had 171 plus 23. Now, some of you might already be able to just add that in your head, but one way that we can think about that number that may make it easier for us is to say this is 100. There's no hundreds place there, plus 70, that's the 7, 70 plus, and this is 20. Plus, here we have 1, and here we have 3. 1 plus 3. And so then when we're adding those together, it's much easier. We have 100, and here we have 90, and here we have 4, which gives me an answer of 194. Let's use another example. You can pause if you want and do this one. See if you can get it right. 132 plus 156. If we were to partition that, how would we do it? We would say 100 plus another 100 gives us 200, 30 plus 50 gives me 80. Let's do it this way. We'll say 200. And this gives me 80. And 2 and 6 gives me 8. And when I put those numbers together, I get 288. So that's partitioning. The second example, or the second method that we're going to use, I'm going to erase this one. The second one we're going to use is called compensating. And compensating means to sort of change the problem a little bit to make something easier and then compensate for the change that I made. So, here's an example. Let's say I did 25 plus 19. Now, that's not a terribly easy problem, but if I had 25 plus 20, that would be a lot easier. So we'll do 25 plus 20, but I have to compensate for the fact that I added an extra 1, so I'm going to take that 1 away whenever I'm done. Now all I have to realize is 25 plus 20 is 45, and then I take away 1 and I get 44. Okay? Let's do another example. We'll do 2 more examples. 46 plus 9. Now, we can make that problem just a little bit easier by saying 46 plus 10. But again, we went up 1, so we've got to take that 1 back away. So 46 plus 10 is 56, and then we take the 1 away, and we get 55. Now we can do the same thing in the other direction as well. So let's say, for example, that we had 56 plus 21. Okay? Now, that problem would be slightly easier if we said 56 plus 20, and then we left a 1 off, so we have to add that 1 back in, and we get 56 plus 20 is 76, and then add another 1, and that gives me 77. Okay? And that is compensating. So our third method, I'm going to erase this if you want to write it down. You might want to pause. Third method we're going to use is called doubling or halving. And doubling and halving is about recognizing a number that could be doubled to make it a little more easier to do the addition or the subtraction. Example, 75 plus 78. Now, if you recognize that there's almost a double of 75 there, we can make this instead 75 plus 75, and then we have an additional 3 from that onto 78. 75 doubled is 150, and then I add another 3 to it, and I get 153. We can do the same thing with halving, if that makes more sense. So for example, let's try 124 minus 61. Now you might realize that half of 124 is 62. So we can change this to 124 minus 62. Now we subtracted 1 more than we needed to, so we need to add that 1 back in. It's sort of like the compensating idea. 124 minus 62, that cuts that number in half, so it's now 62, and then I add 1 and I get 63. One more example, we'll do doubling again. 35 plus 36. Now we realize that this is almost the same, so we're going to make it instead 35 plus 35, and then we need 1 more. So we get 35 doubled is 70, and then 1 more gives me 71. And that is mental strategies for adding and subtracting positive integers.